Hello, and welcome to another review video. This time around, I'll be looking at the unexpected GungHo Another Story rerun. This is a 10 magic stone RAM with a total of 40 units, and for one more stone, you can exclude all the 5 stars and instead roll the machine with 27 units. This is NA's reskin of the Marvel Collab, and surprisingly, we now have all the REM units that are available in JP. Marvel has run 4 times in JP, but this is only NA's second run. I had lost all hope of getting reruns on reskinned collabs since GungHo Another Story didn't run again after JP's third Marvel run, and now it's been about 4 months since JP's fourth run, which is way longer than the usual 2-month delay. So I wonder, what will happen when there's new Marvel units? Will reruns take longer to come to NA? Are we gonna skip some runs, like with the third one? I'm not sure, but at the end of the day, this rerun looks like a net positive, even though this will most likely delay other upcoming collabs like JJK, which I was expecting to follow Sanrio as it did in JP. Unfortunately, most of the units in this RAM are pretty outdated, so I don't see much benefit from rolling here. A few of these units and equips are solid and still see some use in JP to this day, but if we miss out on upcoming collabs, then these units will just gather dust in your monster box. So it is pretty hard for me to recommend rolling here. The machine is pretty expensive and it might not be a fruitful endeavor. If you exchange and buy bundles, you could get most of the units that still see some use. But again, this is a gamble on us getting Digimon, for example. Other than the art, there are some differences between the NA and JP units. For one, we are actually missing one free login unit, Iron Man Extremis Armor, but I don't think that matters. This unit is not that useful, and it's not used for a Sync Awakening, for example. 2. Our Black Metal Exchange unit, Merlin, who is a Riskin Professor X, is Wood Light instead of Light Light, which is honestly better since our version can use either Wood or Light Orbs to clear sticky blinds or recover assist. 3. 2 of our BGM units have different monster types. This might be beneficial or a drawback since some spawns have type-based damage reduction shields. Also, killer latents depend on monster types, so that could go either way too. One of Captain and Iron Man's equips adds machine type, but since their machine type was changed in NA to dragon type, that equip now adds dragon instead. I think that's it when it comes to differences across servers, but let me know if I missed something. When it comes to the free and farmable units, make sure to get them all and at least one of the Black Metal Exchange since they are used for Sync Awakenings. One cool equip with a unique skill is this one, which you can get for free up to 2 times as a conditional clear reward. One of them doesn't require a REM unit, so make sure to check the details on how to get these equips from the quest tab. And most important of all, get the Evo materials for Orlando. You can only get 1 set per account, so these are very precious. Even if for some weird reason you don't have and don't plan on getting Orlando, I would still get the set because there's gonna be people that will forget to, and these mats are tradable between players. Maybe you could arrange a best friend selection out of a trade or one of the many valuable units that are 5-star rarity and are under 100 monster points, like small gems and Tamadras. So when it comes to rolling, I would really avoid doing so, but if you plan to, I would rather try my luck on the 11 Magic Stone RAM, since there isn't much value in the 5-star pool. I'm not gonna talk about the 5 stars, except only for one of them, which is somewhat relevant in JP at the moment due to their equip. Odysseus is the reskin version of Juggernaut, and their second equip is great for SN5 since that dungeon boosts physical type's HP. This equip adds the most bulk out of the ones that add physical type. You don't need this equip for SN5, but it's something to keep in mind if you're debating using this unit as fodder. Odysseus is not worth going into the 10 Magic Stone RAM, so I guess you should only hope to get at least 1 copy from the free login stamp rolls. But if you don't, I wouldn't stress about this. Okay, now onto the 6-star and above units. But before that, if you enjoyed the video, please remember to like and subscribe. Doctor Strange, aka Rosemary, is only interesting due to their Evo's active skill, which condenses a lot of useful effects that are great for Namiel farming teams. This unit is mainly used in the future Loki Descendant that requires a lot of farming if you care to get a bunch of these equips. I've never seen anyone use Rocket and Groot, aka Magus, and I don't think anyone will start. The only value that I see for this unit is their leader swap equip, but we have some more options now, and their buffs didn't make this equip significantly better than those other equips. I really don't see any value for the Penny Parker reskin, Gross. Their transforming active skill doesn't offer anything of value, and post-transformation, they become an unreliable orb changer, and unfortunately, none of their equips do all that much either. Akudaimon's base and Evo are also pretty lackluster, but at least they have an equip with 3 resist and a fortune haste, which could patch a lot of holes in your team and help you quickly transform your unit. Miriam is the Magneto reskin, and she might only be useful for her equips. Her base and Epo have interesting low cooldown active skills, but I don't think these are all that useful in endgame dungeons, so I doubt she will see use outside of GungHo and other story dungeon farming with Shibadra or Binoa. Her first equip was very solid as it added a lot of bulk, but now we have plenty of other equips with 3 team HPs, so this is no longer that special. Her third equip has a really good mix of bulk, damage, and utility awakenings for fire teams. The active skill could also be useful for some of the skill cap monthlies, since this can allow you to fish out all of your orbs for the whole dungeon, but this is probably not gonna be that useful in endgame content. Benibana is our Spidey reskin, and I also don't see much use for any of his form. The base is a piercer with 50% uptime, but Halloween Elfrid has 100% uptime, and she pretty much sees no use, even though she has a higher damage output than Benibana. The Evo has a lot of utility, but also lacks damage, and it doesn't really have a useful active skill. Dreambow has plenty of low cooldown overchangers, and this unit is not even in a 2-turn cooldown, which I feel should be the bare minimum for this type of active skill. The reincarnated form is bulky and has a bit more damage than the others, but is still not that much. Their active skill is also not as useful since it's not an actual cleric, and relying on TPAs to deal with unmatchable debuffs is very slow. Benibana's equips also don't have much use, so I wouldn't exchange for either of these units, though if I had to choose, I would go with Miriam, since she could at least be a farming leader for this event and has 2 okay equips. But really, try to say your father. Our Hulk and She-Hulk reskins are decent wood orb generators, but it's a little too late for them. Hulk, aka Tapio, was the only 1-turn cooldown orb maker for a while until Wanshu was introduced. Tapio does generate more wood orbs, but he has a transforming active skill that doesn't grant any effective skill boost, so Wanshu might be much preferable due to their 3-turn haste. As for She-Hulk, aka Aofi, we now have Tigrex, who has a larger damage output and generates more orbs. This marble unit could be much preferable to run, even though her pre-transformation active skill also doesn't do that much, but you might choose to run her since she could help recover assist, and her RCB boost might help counteract thorns and deal with low recovery in super altitude dungeons. Wood teams, as always, are pretty irrelevant at the moment, so these 2 outdated units won't do anything to bring these teams into the fold. These 2 units are mid rarities, and even if you wanna play wood teams, I would avoid going into the REM. Both of these units are exchangeable, but I would pass on the Captain America and Iron Man reskins. With the rise of other large shield units being released, I don't think Toyota Mahime has that much to offer. Her Evo does offer a bunch of utility, but she doesn't deal any damage at all. The Iron Man reskin, Magres, is only good for the last equip, which is great for machine teams. Honestly, it's good on any team due to the 4 effective skill boosts and the HP awakenings, but you might have better options. So if you have an underdeveloped box and somehow find yourself with a lot of fodder, this might be an okay trade, especially if you play Gino, but I don't know. I would at least give this one a look after you're done exchanging for any of the other Marvel units, if any at all. Skull Maiden is our Doom reskin. This wood TPA unit is a bit of a mess since it has the BTP plus awakening for some reason. Obviously, the cap break on transformation also sucks, and I wouldn't really look at this unit that much since they don't have a bright future ahead. Wood TPA units have Captain Sun support in JP, but all of these units are from the Disney and Magazine collab, and we probably won't get them. Even if we were to, those Wood TPA teams do not use this unit at all, as they have better orb changers. Our Miss Marvel reskin, Azkek, is a decent damage stick for water combo teams. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a change or delay on transformation, and I'm not entirely sure on where to use this unit. Water will get a bunch of good leaders with Digimon and Disney, but again, we don't know if we'll get those. Even if we do get those units, this unit won't see any use, because those water teams run better orb changers. At the very least, her equips add a solid amount of bulk and utility. Both of these units are mid-rarities without a bright future, so I wouldn't try to chase them at all. Vesta is our Dark Phoenix, and she is a damage-oriented cleric who could help recover assist. Unfortunately, on transformation they do not provide any haste or delay, so they won't be much help with all the new transformation units with long cooldowns. Vesta has a decent damage multiplier, but unfortunately, she only has a cap break available to her for 20 turns from transforming, and this could be voided by an enemy that clears debuffs. But maybe you could have a unit in your team that is able to consistently cap break this unit. She also has a somewhat decent leader skill that provides a lot of bonus combos. Nowadays, it would have been better if she provided some Fua, but it's still pretty decent regardless. I guess if you need a dark combo cleric, she isn't that bad of an option, but she's not someone I would chase for because even her equips do not offer much. Milletia is her Captain Marvel reskin, and while she was good in release for UN2 and a worthwhile exchange, that's no longer the case. She can tackle some of the in-game dungeons, but her active skill is an unreliable way of generating light orbs. Plus, she only caps on transformation, meaning an enemy avoiding buffs will leave her barely dealing any to no damage to high defense enemies. If you're summoning Trade Fodder, then maybe you would want to exchange for a copy or two since her equips are not all that bad. The first one is one of the few with a blind resist and a damage awakening, and the third one is also one of the few light sub attribute and 10C equips out there. Unfortunately, neither of these have any haste or delay active skills, or gives on bulk, but the awakenings are still somewhat solid. So overall, I would only look at this unit after you've done all of your other trades, and if you find some value in her equips. The Melica and Kalka duo unit is NA's reskin of the Marvel's duo unit. This is an exchangeable A-star unit that I think I've mentioned before when talking about light piercers. This role is not usually in high demand, but at least this unit is able to tackle damage or attribute absorption depending on the active stage. I could see uses for this unit, but these are contingent on your team needing a dedicated piercer. If they don't, then I think you're better off running a dedicated unit to deal with absorptions. And if we ever get Omnimon, then this unit won't see any use at all, so I would save my trade fodder. Romeo and Juliet is our Spider-Man and Venom reskin, and they make up a 3-unit Fire and Dark PvP system with their cycling active skill, though they alone might not generate enough orbs to make PvPs, since the active skill gives you a random assortment of orbs. You could maximize your chances of getting enough orbs in a 7x6 board, and since their active skill cooldown is very low, it'll be very easy to put a leader swap equip on them. The active skill only raises your damage cap to 6 billion for one turn, which isn't that much damage in today's meta. Them cap breaking your leader does help the damage output a little bit, but honestly, it's still not that much. Their leader skill restricts you to devil and balance types, and it also gives you a raw HP boost, so team building will be more restrictive and you will need to find ways of dealing with large gravity attacks. One way to deal with those is to pair with the high damage reduction devil or balance helper, and that criteria pretty much narrows it down to our Scarlet Witch reskin, Gregorius. This pairing only has 3 million Fua, which is suboptimal for the newer Essen dungeons, but since they could generate a lot of heals, you could fit in a heal box awakening somewhere to deal with problematic super resolves. But again, the orb distribution from their leader skill is random, so you could get screwed over. Romeo and Juliet's equips are somewhat decent, but these are something I would feel comfortable skipping. If you have no interest in the system, I wouldn't even bother exchanging for one of these units for the equips. This team is from Marvel's third run, and something we should have gotten earlier this year, so it's really not surprised that this team feels very outdated. Oola Moola is our Thor's Duo reskin unit, which is a BGM purchasable for $30. This light combo unit leader swaps with their active skill and also gives 2 turns of haste. With this, it doesn't matter which type of equip you put on them since they most likely won't overcharge. This gives you more freedom to put a damage equip on them, which this unit really needs since their damage multiplier isn't that high unless you match a BDP and a hard L. You want to run this unit on a 7x6 board so you can maximize light combos and fit all of those special shapes. So this unit is very orb hungry, as you'll need at least 15 light orbs to deal meaningful damage. Instead of BDPs, you could instead run the T Super Awakening to also lower the orb requirement, but then you'll need to run a Piercer sub. I looked at some of the teams that JP players came up with, and I wasn't a fan of these. They usually run 2 or 3 other orb changers, so they don't have a lot of flexibility when it comes to countering game mechanics. Light combo leaders will make somewhat of a comeback later on with Crowley from the GungHo Collab, and for those teams, Oola and Moola won't be a requirement, and that also goes for this unit's equips. Their first equip is very interesting because it's the first one with the Light Sub attribute and Levitate Awakening, but I can't really think of a unit that desperately needs this at the moment. The other 2 equips are not that interesting in my opinion, so at the end of the day, I don't see any reason at all why you would even want to get this bundle. The Queen of Hearts and her Royal Guard is the patch unit, which is an Ace, Deadpool and Wolverine reskin. Her cycling active skill allows her to create a system with 3 copies of her. Her playstyle reminds me of Kamen Rider Wizard, but this unit adds slidovers into the mix. If you manage to get 3 copies of this unit, her scaling leader skill can deal a lot of damage, but get ready to spend a lot of time making multiple columns. Healing may be an issue in super altitude dungeons or when there are a lot of thorns, since her leader skill encourages hard columns and not TPAs. Her auto heal effect from her active skill does help counteract this issue, but it's gonna be very hard to deal with both of those mechanics combined, since to deal damage, you will generally need to move orbs a lot. SN4 and SN5 have plenty of thorns and also reduce your team's RCB, so I wouldn't really feel comfortable bringing this unit past SN3, even though they would benefit in SN5 due to their physical typing. Her first equip is very solid for dark teams, especially those that can also make use of the Hardbox Awakening, so think Lelouch or Romeo and Juliet teams. If you play those teams, you might feel tempted to get this equip, but I would honestly pass, as $30 is obviously way too much for this unit, and it's also not worth the fodder, as one copy essentially costs you 100 magic stones. Even if you manage to free roll 2 of her and want to get your third one to complete the system, I would still skip, since they're not gonna be able to do much in upcoming dungeons. Sertheis is our Apocalypse reskin, and he is a piercer, so automatically he doesn't have much use in today's meta. Awakenings wise, he does bring some decent utility to a team, but their damage output is lacking. This unit was briefly used with Kurotobi teams on this unit's initial debut, as his Pierce active skill could also solve Kurotobi's issue of being unable to deal with certain boards that have a lot of heals, water, or dark orbs with the orb refresh effect. His first 2 equips are at least decent. The first one has a great mix of awakenings, though the active skill is very lacking. The second equip gives a decent amount of effective skill boost, utility, and damage. So while I don't see much use for the base form at the present, if you get this unit, you at least have a choice of 2 decent equips. Gregorius is our Scarlet Wedge, and this unit is a good damage stick for fire teams. This pre-transformation active skill is a bit on the long side for not having any effective skill boost, and post-transformation, it doesn't offer much outside of giving a spike and a cap break. I guess the damage absorption could be useful, but nowadays we have non-transformation short cooldown units that handle both attribute and damage absorption, so I struggle to see where you would rather run Gregorius. The only place I saw this unit being used was in a Yoko B Noah team in old UN5 due to their cap break and high damage multiplier being necessary to deal with high defense enemies. He's not a fire attribute and his pre-transformation active skill is way longer than Gregorius, but nowadays you could substitute Rimuru in an old UN5 team, if you even still care about clearing this dungeon. So like with other GungHo and other story units, their late arrival means we barely have any need for them since they've been power crept. At least Gregorius equips are still okay, so they're not totally useless. Our Gambit reskin, Scathach, is a decent Dark Orb generator that could work as a sub or a leader, but you might have the better version of this unit that in JP came after, Goten Bad Bad Smaru. This unit does have the advantage of providing more skill boost with her pre-transformation active skill and hard L, or you could run the Assist Recovery Latent since this unit has a double L. The downside is that this unit needs 10 more skill boost to transform when compared to Goten Bad Bad Smaru, and her post-transformation active skill only gives you 6 Dark Orbs, while the Sanryu unit changes 2 fixed rows to both Dark Orbs and Heal Orbs. If your board is flooded by Heal or Dark Orbs, you might not even be able to match the 2 needed combos to deal damage and activate your leader skill damage reduction. So unless you don't have another unit with these many possible skill boosts, I would rather run Goten Bad Bad Smaru. And if you need a dark unit for orb generation and Ls, I would run Fatalist. Those 2 alternatives were more accessible since you could exchange for them, and with Scathach, the only way to obtain them is to actually roll the REM. So if you have those 2 other units, I would honestly not go after this one, unless you really like one of their equips. The first one isn't too impressive, though it's the only dark equip with a BDP and Blind Awakening. More people will be interested in the second equip, which gives you a good amount of effective skill boost and damage. The Bind Recovery Awakening will soon get buffed, but I doubt that there are that many teams that will actually care about matching a row of heals, at least for now. This equip could be used in the SM4 team that I use to tackle roulette orbs. I don't really think it's that necessary since the roulettes aren't present for too long, but maybe that's something that interests you if you care about farming SN4. And even if you don't care, this is a very solid equip for any dark team, though dark has a lot of equips that change your sub-attribute and come with damage awakenings. Still, more options are always good to have. Ifu is our Cyclops reskin, and honestly they don't offer much outside of the Evo, and even that is a bit of a stretch. The base form has a Pierce active skill, which there isn't much demand for. They could have a decent damage multiplier with the BDP plus Super Awakening, but those type of teams are not that relevant at the moment, and the Pierce active skill is redundant in those teams. The Evo has the largest multi-target button multiplier with no extra animation, so maybe you could find places to use this. The highest attack stat for a non-transforming unit in the Moon Dungeon is Dark Hill, so if you equip Ifu onto this unit, you could deal around 15 billion damage. Unfortunately, damage from button actives that have a multiplier like this one are capped at 2.1 billion damage, regardless if the unit has a DDC latent or others that raise the unit's cap. So there comes a point where these large button multipliers are not gonna make a big difference. Since super gravity affects a unit's attack stat, maybe one day these button active skills that have large multipliers will actually matter, but by then we might have multi-target active skill versions of base Toto's active skill or a multi-target version of Kohaku's equip. And these buttons with the fixed damage attack are much better since they do not depend on having a very specific unit that has a Sun or Moon Awakening and a bunch of attack plus latents. Ifu's equips are also not that interesting for a bundle unit. The first and last one could matter if attacker type ever matters for a unit's leader skill or a dungeon in the future. The second equip could be alright on Namiel due to the water sub-attribute and attack boost from the Awakenings, but honestly, none of these and even the Evo form are worth $20 in my eyes, so I would skip the bundle. Enku and Sakumei is the NA version of the duo unit Captain America and Iron Man. Our version is different from the JP unit, as this one was changed from an attacker machine to attacker dragon type, which might be good or bad depending if we ever get a dungeon that boosts either of those types. The monster type change also affects which killer latents you are able to use on them. This is sort of a nerf for our version, since generally god killers are more applicable to a lot of enemies in the game, and our version is unable to take those. Anyways, you could make a 3-unit system, and this setup has a 50% shield activated at all times, but I find it a little bit weird that their stage 2 active skill gives a pierce effect, since I think you should have the BDP Super Awakening because it gives you a needed damage boost. But I guess you might not need that SA if you run a scaling combo leader like Rimuru. As an example, this SN5 team is very NA friendly. The creator said that it was really painful to get this clear, but I'm sharing this team because I haven't seen that many NA friendly teams that are able to tackle SN5 with units that we have in NA right now. Good luck assembling this though, as 5 out of the 6 units are BGM cards. Another reason why you might not want to run the BDP Super Awakening is that this active skill could give you lesser than 9 orbs, and you might not have another orb generator in the team. This unit was also key for the SN3 speedrunning team due to their large damage cap breaking active skill and the short cooldown on the second stage. But it's a little too late for that. Their equips are somewhat solid. The first one adds a good amount of OEs, but I don't think there's a dungeon where you want to stock up on water resist awakening. The second one will probably have the most use but might not be all that special since there are a bunch of 2-turn haste and 2 Team HP equips out there. This equip is also different in NA since the base form is no longer a machine type. The equip matches that by granting dragon type instead of machine. Machine type would have been much better since Gino is very relevant at the moment and I can only think of Goten who cares about dragon type. Maybe down the line we'll get a better dragon leader, but as things stand, NA got the short end of the stick with this equip, though I don't think this matters all that much since this equip is still pretty solid overall. This is a BGM unit and I don't see why you would want to purchase them, as I don't see much use for a single copy other than use it for its second equip. I could see maybe why someone that has rolled 2 copies already would want to buy the third, but even then, I would try to stay away. The system is not all that strong, so I would save my money for something better. The Ant-Man reskin, Amir Khazam, is a BGM unit who I don't think has much going for them, apart from the last equip. The base form is a red and light BDP unit, but unless you're still playing Yuha or Ranji, you probably won't care about this. And even if you still are, I feel like you can pass on this, as this unit is an orb changer and those type of teams already handle that role. Their 5 effective HP does make them a decent leader, and if you create an Amir system, you could loop the HP buff active skill, but I would rather save myself the chase for multiple BGM units. The first 2 equips aren't too interesting. The first one does have good awakenings, but a lackluster active skill. The second one might be okay for fire BDP teams, but these aren't too popular at the moment, so you might not care for them. The last one is an amazing equip for machine teams, i.e. Gino. It adds a lot of bulk and gives you a 10C, which could be great on either Labril or Ordeal Ra. The active skill could also help if you're able to delay some of the early floors, but even if the active skill did nothing of use, I would still try to fit it into my Geno or Machine team. We have had Geno for a while now, and so far, we have survived without this equip, so at this point in time, you might feel like you don't actually need this equip. Yes, using this will make team building easier, but $30 for an equip sounds like a waste of money to me. Obviously, this all depends on how you see it. Maybe you think you will also soon have an endgame dungeon that boosts machine type HP and you want to have this just in case. Maybe you're struggling to meet some HP thresholds with your Geno team and feel like this equip will solve all of your issues, but overall, I still feel like this is not worth the $30. Yuira is our Wolverine reskin, which is one of the orb skin units, but unfortunately, you can no longer buy the bundle. The base and equips keep showing up in some teams here and there for some of the new endgame content in JP. The base is an auto healer and cleric, sort of similar to Ordeal Ceres, but exchanges the L and damage potential for a higher auto heal percentage and more skill boost. If JJK is still in the cards for us, here's an SN5 team with this unit as a sub, but they could honestly be replaced with other units like Celti and Nunnally. Neither of those two units are clerics though, so even though Yuira doesn't deal as much damage or have as much utility in a Sukune team, she could double up on rolls and save you a team slot. The Evo has a 7-turn cooldown, 1-turn haste active skill, but its effects aren't that interesting to include in a system. The only use I see for this unit is as a farming leader, since its leader skill grants you no Skyfall combos and a sort of unconditional damage reduction and attack boost for a swiping team. Another somewhat similar unit is Nergigante, who is arguably better since they are actually able to tackle dungeons like UN6, but they are also slower since their leader skill gives +4 bonus combos. And I wouldn't really trust this unit's leader skill for dungeons like UN6, since if an enemy has a multi-hit preemptive, they could straight up kill you since you could lose your damage reduction after a hit or two. The first and third equips show up in builds from time to time too, especially in the Billion Title Dungeon, also known as the UN Rush, since their light resist and 2 skill boost awakenings, along with their haste active skills, help a lot in that dungeon. Outside of that upcoming dungeon, I would probably try to use other equips with team HPs rather than light resist. But if you plan on farming rank experience in the UN Rush dungeon and have hopes that type from Digimon will actually come to NA, you might want to pick up this unit, as this is one of the better teams out there to farm that dungeon. Like I said, unfortunately this orb skin unit is no longer purchasable, so you will have to venture into the REM if you want to get this unit, and honestly, I don't really think that's worth it. The Wolverine and Magneto reskin, Roserie and Lucerita, is an orb generator that can also handle a few other gimmicks with their cycling Evo active skill. You could create a system with 2 units, but unfortunately, they don't have much going on for them damage-wise, and their active skill only generates 4 of each orb, which isn't that many, but I guess it's on par with other units that also have a 4-turn and 1-turn cooldown active skills. Again, this unit's damage is very lacking, but they solve a lot of headaches in the Billion Title Dungeon with Tai. The first equip is also useful for that UN Rush dungeon due to its light resist, but most of the builds I've seen run regular Wolverines, aka Yuria's equip, even though that other one doesn't have a team HP awakening. You might recognize the second equip, as this one is very commonly seen in JP builds for a lot of different teams. This equip has 6 effective skill boosts, 2 team HPs, and some OE awakenings. It's an all-purpose equip that shines in every team, though nowadays, I feel like it's not as broken as it once was before, since we have more great equips out there now. A somewhat similar equip is Gyoko's base, which has the same number of effective skill boosts, team HPs, and OEs, but has a higher cooldown, since this one is a 4-turn haste. I would say generally, Roserie's and Lucerita's equip is better at the end of the day, since you might not have enough skill boost at the beginning of a dungeon to have Gyoko's up in time. The last equip is the only one with a levitate and 2 team HP awakenings, so this can add a good amount of bulk and give a significant damage boost. On top of that, it also comes with a haste active skill and Fu awakening, which might not be useful most of the time, but could help deal with large enemy shields. All of these units' equips are very strong, and the base unit can be great in UN Rush Tai teams, so this is a bundle I would highly consider getting. Even if we miss out on Digimon, you could still get a lot of use from those equips. Orlando is our Thanos reskin that is very commonly included in farming and speedrunning teams. That only goes for the Evo form, since the base isn't that impressive. The base's awakenings, active skill, and leader skill are very underwhelming. It does have up to 8 skill boosts, but that alone isn't impressive nowadays. As for the Evo, this unit has 3 attributes and a decent damage multiplier, along with the ever useful 50% gravity active skill. This unit is always great on farming teams, and he was an important unit for the SN3 fastest teams. So for those reasons alone, I think you should not pass up the chance to get at least one copy of him, as you might come to regret not having him in the future since 50% gravities are rare enough as it is, and sometimes NA does not have access to them, with the example being that unit from Gundam. Orlando is exchangeable for 7-star GFEs, so you could skip the lackluster REM and just trade for this unit. Make sure to grab his Evo materials too. These are exchangeable for rainbow tickets, and each account is limited to only one set, but these are under 100 MP, so they are tradable. If you have alts, make sure to grab a set on each account, or if you have the time, you could make new accounts and trade these materials to your main account. Last time around, I ended up with 3 sets of mats, and at different points in time, since the collab ended in NA, I gave away 2 sets to friends since they forgot to get these. Get these while you can, since I doubt you'll find a lot of people with extra sets to exchange after the collab is over. Orlando's equips are pretty useful. The first one maybe not as much, but the last 2 have very useful awakenings. The second one has a good mix of damage and bulk awakenings, and the Lyrises could come in very handy in the billion title dungeon where you'll need to face tank huge hits from the boss. The third equip also has great awakenings. It's sort of similar to Bismarck's and Toto's equip. Unlike the latter, Orlando's only has a 1-turn haste, but this is still great and you might not care about the active skill. I would definitely exchange for 2 copies of Orlando, one to keep in his Evo form and the other to freely switch between equips as needed. If you're unable to spread the fodder for 2, you could make alts to farm the Evo mats and switch between forms and equips as needed. This is very cumbersome and time consuming, but at least it's free. Up to you, but I'll definitely be getting at least 2 Orlandos. So yeah, I definitely think you should prioritize Orlando. You don't even have to roll the REM. You could just exchange some of the GFEs you have gotten from the recent 12 Magic Stone Super Catfest. When it comes to other useful units from here, I do find it hard to recommend getting them since you either have to roll them or purchase them with real money. Roserie and Lucerita have amazing equips and could be very useful for tied teams to farm rank experience in the UN Rush dungeon, but we're not sure if we'll get the Digimon collab. You could buy this unit for $30, but I fear you might not get much usage out of this if we happen to miss out on Digimon and if you have a deep box with comparable equips. Yuira is a great auto healer and cleric combo that could work in various teams. For example, in an SN5 Sukuna team. This unit used to be purchasable, but that's no longer the case, so you'll have to venture into the REM to even get a chance at rolling her, and again, that's going to be very pricey. Most of the exchangeable units other than Orlando are not worth it in my opinion. They might have decent equips like Magres and Milletia, but honestly, I would skip on them. Most of the 5 and 6 stars are just as lackluster too. Some like Rosemary, Ayofi, Gregorius, Scathach, and Sertheis are usable either in their base form or their equips, but the only way to get them is to roll, which again, I would try to avoid. I would especially avoid rolling the 10-stone REM, since the only somewhat decent unit is Odysseus for his equip that is great in SN5. But for 1 more stone, you have the same chance of rolling Orlando in the other REM. So if you don't have the latter and can't muster up the fodder, try your luck in the 11-stone machine. Personally, I'll be trying my luck with 1 multi on the 11 Magic Stone REM, just to see if I can get lucky with Roserie and Lucerita or with Yuira. There's still the matter of what collab is next. I thought JJK would follow soon after Sanrio, but GungHo surprised us with this reskin. Now hopefully, JJK will follow GungHo another story, but who knows? The Taiwan and Hong Kong server missed the recent rerun even though they got the debut run. It could be that we'll be in the same camp, and GungHo is running this collab to pad the calendar since there's a small chance that we won't get JJK and other future collabs. We don't have a clue about Digimon since that's a new IP to pad, but I would still try to aim to have around 300 magic stones by then to be able to exchange for at least 3 Omnimon, who is the next jump in the power creep. Then for Disney, I would say we have a very low chance of getting it, so I wouldn't count on it. Maybe we could get a reskin since this is the second run in JP, and I guess we now have a pattern of getting a reskin on JP's second run. That's a bit of a stretch though. We won't know until it's announced. The Shonen Magazine collab is also technically a rerun, but this is packed with multiple different IPs, and I'm almost sure that we won't be seeing any of those in NA. As for the GungHo collab, we are sure to get that one. If we happen to miss out on all of these collabs, then units from this REM might be NA's best chance to tackle the SN5 title. That is, if we even get the collab during the title length. For the SN4 title, which is ongoing right now in NA, JP had both JJK and Digimon units available, and our server is stuck with these outdated units. Even if we assume we'll be getting JJK, I don't think we're gonna see this collab while the title challenge is active, since GungHo Another Story will go on for the remainder of the title length. The Christmas REM will return later this month, but I doubt anything from here will be on the same level as Sukuna or Omnimon. So even though we get this REM earlier, I really doubt that this will be a must-roll event, especially after seeing some of the teasers. JP will also have a stream on December 14th, and they might announce a new or returning collab. So if you only have a few stones, I wouldn't rush to roll in GungHo Another Story. For now, I would hold my stones and keep saving for Digimon. And if you have no hopes about that collab coming to an A, I would still wait and see what GungHo will announce on the next stream. Alright, that does it for this video. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I appreciate your support. And if you have any thoughts about what's to come to our server, let me know. I'm still hoping Digimon will make it to us, because otherwise the UN Rush and SM5 titles might be out of our grasp on release. See you guys next time. Goodbye.